Wood. It's a temperamental material. It can be hard, stubborn. It's alive, moving and distorting however it pleases. As a designer and woodworker, I create furniture that transforms this natural material into something comfortable, approachable, soft. That is, until the wood fights back. When it comes to designing furniture, there's one piece I love more than any other: the chair. The chair is the ultimate challenge. It works very hard at doing a lot of things all at once, combining engineering and design in a way that provides support and comfort to its user. I'm of the belief that the best and most iconic chair designs do more with less. They have an efficiency of parts that come together to form an integrated piece of domestic art. For this build, I'm taking it up a notch. I'm making a relatively complex host chair, or a dining chair with arms, but here's the twist: from just 7 total components. The first component I'm working on is the arm itself, which will double as the chair backrest. In the first part of this video, you've been seeing me cut 60-degree angles into boards of beech wood. That's so I can glue them up radially and in layers. From there I can cut out the armrest shape. For this project I've switched over to Type Bond, as I've found that the setup time is quicker and also it is cleanable with water, which means I can get the joints cleaner and more precise. It's a small change, but I think woodworking is all about accumulating these marginal gains, and in the end they add up to something significant. I've learned that if you make enough small improvements in whatever you do, it has a compound effect on the final result. Over the course of a few days, I slowly assembled the armrest, gluing up the segments in parts. As well as testing my patience, this process really tested my lack of clamps. I've accumulated some amazing tools over the past year, but I still somehow have a shortage of good clamps. Another reminder that if there's a woodworker in your life, a clamp is always a good gift. I got this template laser cut out of some thick acrylic. Having a high quality and robust template will allow me to repeat this process for future use. With the outline marked up, my next step is to rough cut the armrest with my jigsaw. While thinking up this design, it taught me a lot about the process of design refinement, doing away with any superfluous aspects in the name of design efficiency. It may be tempting to show off your technical prowess and do as much as possible with your work, but really engaging in the key aspects of your design and trying to pare back all the rest is just as challenging and promotes a different kind of skill, that of conciseness. Using that same piece of acrylic, I can also template route the armrest with total accuracy, using a flush trim bit. When I thought about the components that make up the design, I tried my best to make sure each part is doing at least 2 jobs. In this case, the arms of the chair are also the backrest, and also form the overall structural brace for the leg assembly. The end result is no less complex, but it seeks to find a more elegant solution for that complexity. The more I was thinking about this, the more I could take a life lesson from this. When you break up a complex task into its constituent parts and tackle those parts one by one, the task doesn't seem so complex anymore. I wanted to add a round over to continue to build on this theme of softness. The round over itself was a little too controlled though, so I finished with my sander to give an even softer, almost pebble-like feel. While I had the router bit set up, I also added a fillet to 2 pieces of wood which would form the stretchers. So next I could move on to the next 3 components, the legs. Again, I wanted to build on this soft, balloon-like aesthetic, so the plan was to route a groove detail so that the legs would look a bit like those balloon animals you get at the fun fair. I bought this special router bit, whose name is quite a mouthful. Setting up a flip stop, I brought the leg to the router and slowly rotated it on the bit. I thought there's also something trippy about seeing the main structural elements, the legs, be carved away and seemingly weakened. But there's no doubt the remaining leg is still plenty thick and plenty strong structurally. One issue I had was the router left a lot of burning on the groove detail, so I needed a way to sand these burn marks out. My multi-tool is my smallest power sander, but even it couldn't get into the nook. So instead I tried to use a hanger bolt so that I could chuck the leg into my drill. Then I could make a sort of makeshift lathe to make the sanding easier. As ghetto as this seemed, surprisingly it did the trick. In the end, I could achieve a soft, balloon-like finish. By the way, if you're enjoying this video and if you think I've earned it, I'd really appreciate your subscription. Just following this channel and watching my videos supports me an awful lot. Thank you. I could then cut the legs to length at the table saw. Finally, I added a round over to the ends to complete the balloon animal aesthetic. And with that, the main parts of the leg assembly were complete. Next was time for some joinery, the first being a half lap to connect the stretcher pieces together. I did this at the table saw, which ensured a really clean cut. I kept checking the fit throughout and sneaked up on the cut to ensure a snug fit. After that, I cut in the mortises for attaching the armrests to the legs. I marked these out and used the distance between the two end holes to determine the length of the stretchers. You'll notice here I also cut a hole at half depth into one stretcher. I'll come back to that later. I then drilled holes straight through the arm piece at the points where it meets the legs. Once I had the stretcher and the mortises mocked up, I could double check that the length I calculated was correct, as well as set out the centered position of the middle leg. I prefer to do this with the actual final pieces rather than with theoretical measurements. I then cut the stretcher pieces to their final length. And by the way, if you're still keeping count, the stretcher pieces are components 5 and 6. Next I marked out and began cutting the mortises which connect the legs to the stretcher. Again, the whole sub-assembly is intended to essentially combine to make a structural frame for the seat to rest on, so these joints need to be fairly tight. I used the drill press with a depth stop to first carve out as much material as possible. I then finished with some relaxing chisel work. Again, I took my time and made sure the fit was nice and snug. With the joinery elements ready, I could move on to assembly. This project straddled the period as winter was turning into spring, and as I began to assemble the base and feel the project coming together, there was a freshness in the air, and with it a renewed optimism and energy to complete the project. This was a really fun part of the build, where the components went from flat, almost 2D pieces to making a 3-dimensional frame. I enjoyed working out which parts needed to be glued and in which order to give me the best chance of an accurate assembly. Now remember that hole I drilled into the stretcher earlier? That was so I could drive in a wood screw, as I was a bit worried about the strength of the joint with glue alone. The hole would then allow me to later plug this screw with some dowel. I again tried to be very diligent with the glue up, being as prepared as possible and checking my angles were square at every stage. It was a relatively simple frame, but nonetheless the level of accuracy surprised even me. Oh, that's spot on. I could then glue in the through tenons to connect the arm to the legs. At this stage the frame was still worryingly wobbly, but once these tenons were in, the whole thing became incredibly sturdy, with the armrest and stretchers bracing the sideways torsion. All the tenons and plugs could then be flush cut and sanded, revealing the completed base assembly. So finally comes the 7th and last component of the design, and maybe the most important one, the seat pan. My idea was to use spalted beech so the figuring could offer a counterpoint to the more standardized beech of the rest of the build, but still come from the same wood family. I had a slab which was a bit too small, so I wanted to fill in one edge with epoxy resin. I began by cleaning up the live edge. As I was doing this, I noticed a little too much material was coming off, and on closer inspection the whole slab was incredibly soft, to the point where I could even leave a mark in it with my fingernail. This didn't seem right, and if you know of any way to stabilize this slab so I can use it in the future, please let me know in the comments. I know I wanted to evoke the feeling of softness, but this wasn't what I had in mind. So instead I used this piece of cherry I had lying around, as I felt the wood could be a nice match for the beech. The problem was though that the piece I had was quite a bit warped, but I noticed the warping was only in one direction, so I tried to cut this into smaller pieces to take out some of the flex. This already helped, but I knew if I cut it into smaller strips it would be even better. So I cut a straight edge with my track saw, and using that as a reference edge could cut the other side at the table saw. I ended up with mostly flat strips, and carefully selecting a good order for the pieces, for both grain direction and flatness, I was confident I could glue these up in a way that ensured a flat panel overall. piece is in clamps, I could let this dry and just hope for the best. By the way, a small plug, if you like the t-shirt I'm wearing here, it's actually a new arrival in my merch shop. I'm really pleased with the quality, so if you're interested, please check it out. Out of clamps, the panel was finally flat and I felt I was in the home stretch, so I could move on to circle routing the seat shape. Once I had the circle marked out with the router, I tried to rough cut the shape with my jigsaw, but the wood seemed to have other ideas. There was a ton of smoke and my jigsaw didn't seem to be able to handle it. I'm not sure what caused this, but I thought to instead cut out the excess at my table saw. I just carefully kept rotating the piece and clamped it down in between cuts to ensure no weird mishaps, like the saw blade potentially rotating the circular piece on contact. I then flush trimmed the seat at my router using the top routed edge as a guide. Again, I wanted to add a round over to both sides. However, although this looked okay, I felt the fillet could be more pronounced to really drive home the notion of softness. So I switched to this larger, rather more intimidating router bit. This gave a far gentler curve, and then using my sander I could again almost sculpt the edge further, reinforcing the pebble-like quality of the wood that I wanted to achieve. Next I used the cove bit to route in a couple of grooves into the bottom of the seat. This was so the seat could lock into the stretcher and form a structural brace for the chair as a whole. With so few overall components, it was important that the seat also played a structural role. After this I could finally begin the finishing process. For this build I'm trying something a bit different. I'm using Danish oil, which in this case is a polymerized linseed oil which I built up in layers. I applied one layer, wiped off any excess, let it cure, then rub it with some steel wool before applying the next layer. In total I did 3 layers. I found that I really prefer this stuff to the hard wax oils I'd previously used because it gives a very natural, fine furniture feel to the wood. There's something about the hard wax oils I've used in the past that just didn't feel right to the touch. Finally, I'm mounting the seat to the leg assembly with these rather custom looking right angle brackets. I was again worried about the relative wood movement of the parts, but was this overkill? Could I have just used glue? Let me know in the comments. In any case, this wrapped up the build. This project was a great example of how breaking a complex idea into smaller parts can lead to a successful outcome. By focusing on each component of the chair design, both individually and in its interrelation to all the other parts, I was able to create a holistically designed piece of furniture that turns the theme of softness into something tangible using hardwood. The result is a chair that feels inviting and comfortable, yet still strong and well made. It shows how thoughtful design and careful planning can transform a complex idea into something simple and beautiful. Taking what I had learned over the past year, I was able to reach a higher level of accuracy and finish in a way that made me say, "Oh, that's spot on." Thank you for watching my video.